Hello, my friends. I just wanted to drop some special bonus episodes into the feed that you probably have not heard unless you are a part or an early part of the Patreon for the Life Shift podcast. If you don't know, I do have a Patreon. It currently only has two tiers. One is a $3 a month tier just to support what I'm doing, helps cover production costs. And then there's a $5 tier, which will get you episodes early and just the, I guess, warm fuzzies for helping me out with the Life Shift podcast. But I used to have other tiers where people were so generous and were offering additional money each month to get bonus episodes and possible winnings of t-shirts and all sorts of things. And then I realized a couple months ago that I wasn't able to deliver what I wanted to, especially for those of you that were giving me the extra money. So right now we're just kind of doing the early episodes. You'll always get those. So if you want to support the Life Shift podcast, please jump over to patreon.com/the Life Shift podcast, and you can find that information there. But I come on here because I want to share a series of these bonus episodes that I did early on in the Patreon journey. There are like 20 plus episodes in which I had bonus recordings with previous guests. So I would go back and we would have a conversation about the experience of sharing their story on the Life Shift podcast, catch up on anything. And I think these are super important. And I know most of them did not see the light of day from outside of the Patreon. So I'm going to be dropping these episodes. Whatever you're listening to now is another episode. So I'm going to use the same intro for all of them. But here is one of the bonus episodes with a former guest from the Life Shift podcast. And if you like this, let me know, because I'm thinking of bringing some of this back and talking to previous guests as I go into year 4. So enjoy this bonus episode that was once released on the Patreon feed. I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that have changed lives forever. Hey, Diane.
Hi.
Hey, everyone listening. So I am here with Diane Diaz. And Diane, you were episode 20, which is kind of blowing my mind right now.
I know, it seems a long time ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, we recorded your episode probably June of 2022, possibly. And it was released in July 2022. And you were episode 20. And I think I just recorded episode 84 or 85 at this point of recording. And it just feels like it was yesterday, but also 100 years ago.
I know. Well, you'll be hitting 100 episodes soon.
Yeah,
That's
which
exciting.
I'm supposed to do something for that. So we'll see. We were just talking about before we started recording that, screw the rules. There's a lot of these rules in podcasting.
Yes, yeah.
And so for the Patreon folks, there's a certain tier that we have these bonus episodes every couple weeks where I just return selfishly to talk to people that I've already talked to. And a lot of these conversations have been centered around storytelling, which I think is just your jam in general.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
And what you do with speaking your brand and what you do with your own company and what you do as a teacher. So thinking about that, you came onto the show and talked about your experiences in what we'll call a toxic relationship with a dead weight by your side.
Yes.
After telling that story, did you have any kind of feelings of like letting that out? I know it was probably not the first time you ever told it, but maybe it was the first time you told it in that way.
Well, it definitely wasn't the first time I had told that story. It was the first time in a long time that I had told that story, because I don't often have the chance to talk about that kind of stuff. I don't think I necessarily had any specific feelings about it. However, I am the type of person, after I have any conversation with someone, I'm the type of person who goes back and in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if I would have said that this way. Maybe I should have said that differently. You do that sort of like, I don't know why I do that. Nothing that I wish I hadn't said or anything like that. Just sort of like a reassessing of like how I said things. And so I went back and listened to the episode this morning, and I was totally kind of fine with like everything that I said. And I did have a realization when I was listening to it this morning that, and you kind of made this point when we were talking during the podcast episode, but this idea that I think you had asked me something about like, what was it about somebody having said dead weight versus other people had told me before, like, he's no good, like, why didn't that work? And why was dead weight the thing? And I think it was because I had mentioned this, like, I knew from a very young age that I needed to do something different than what my mom did because I couldn't end up in that same situation. And that idea of dead weight was the feeling of it will sink you to the bottom of the ocean and you'll never get out of this life that you're living with your family over which you have no control. So you got to do something different. So that is what made me, like, jolted me out of my, I guess, complacency and like, okay, this can't be this way.
Yeah, I mean, it painted a picture for me. I certainly felt like it was, I think we talk a lot about like ball and chain and shackles and those kind of things, but that idea of a dead weight, I totally pictured like an anvil, like like a Roadrunner and
Roadrunner style, yeah. Oh yeah,
that kind of thing. And I think a lot of people are in that complacency mode for a long time because we kind of don't look at the larger picture of it. We look at it in the moment. Everything's fine. It's fine. It'll be fine tomorrow. There's another good time coming. And sometimes it takes the right words at the right time for us to kind of make these changes.
Yeah. And I think too, that's a good point. And if you look at it, if you look at where you're at and where you need or want to go, it seems so far away and so much needs to happen before you can get there, right? If you look at it that way, because we don't look at it as like, well, I'll just take the first step. We're not rationalizing it that way. We're like, oh my God, I just can't have this life. I need a different life. Well, that's a big change, right? Especially when you're a young adult and you don't have that many options or choices available to you. So it's like, well, how do you even make that change? So it's a good, I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020 and being much older and having done things, I can reflect on it. But, if anybody listening to this is young, it's a good lesson in just take the first step because that's all you have to do. So I just needed to do the one thing that I could control, which was to get out of that relationship.
Well, and I think in relationships, I think sometimes we also talk ourselves out of it because, like, could it be better? Is there even is this the good? And then there's something worse.
Yes, that's
right. And so,
such a good point.
It's very scary to take that first step. I think in anything, right? But you're dealing with a lot more vulnerability in emotion, and then if you leave and then need to come back, then what? And then there's all this other people around you. So I think your episode was really important for those that are in relationships that, they feel stuck or they feel like maybe something could be better, that maybe there is something that they can do to at least regain some of that independence or control over their lives. But I think a lot of yours really stemmed to your childhood, for sure, like you said.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Thinking of your mom's situation and even your situation as a child in that relationship of your parents or lack thereof, there was a lot of trauma that probably came along with you that at that moment was like, all right, we're good. Let's go.
Yeah. 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 It's funny how the trauma sort of directs you and then you get to a point. I mean, not everybody probably gets to this point, but I did. Like, you get to this point where you're like, yeah, okay, I got to do something else. This isn't, I can't, at the time, obviously I wasn't examining the trauma because I didn't even have that language or know that that's what was going on. But I certainly knew something had to change because I couldn't stay in that relationship and risk ending up like my mom.
Did you before we had that conversation, did you always identify that conversation as your turning point or when you decided to kind of change your life or leave that individual?
Probably not in those words, but that those two words, dead weight, stayed. I don't know. Anytime, how there's like points in your life and certain memories that you'll remember over and over at different times, they'll pop into your head and it's just like a recurring memory. It's like you don't remember every single thing you did, but a couple of key things pop into your mind. That conversation would pop into my mind I would just be thinking about college or something like, oh, and then I remember that conversation, right? So like, so those words
Yeah.
definitely did stay with me.
The reason I ask that, and it's happened to me already in this show, but a lot of times I'll start coordinating with guests, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this happened in my life, like more of like, oh, I got a divorce,
Mm-hmm.
And so then I go back before we have the conversation and I really challenge them to think of like, what was the specific trigger? Like, what was the thing that triggered you or triggered your life to really shift in that way? And a lot of people come back to me like, wow, like I never actually sat and reflected on these moments.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it happened to me because, when I launched a show, I was like, yeah, when my mom died, that like totally changed my life. And the more I have these conversations, of course, yes, that changed my life. But the moment was really when my dad sat me down and he had to tell me, because she had been dead for 5 hours and I was still living my life as that same person.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like, through these conversations, I was like, well, I'm challenging people to think of the moment. And now I'm like, oh, okay, mine is not exactly what I thought it was either. So that's kind of where that question stemmed from. But I think there's a lot of value in reflecting what triggered us in a good way or a bad way.
Yeah, no, I always find it interesting.
I don't know if you have opinions on triggers.
My only opinion on triggers is that they are real. So it's interesting because so speaking of triggers, as I was somewhere the other day with my boyfriend and I can't remember, we were doing something and then something came up and I said, or he said, oh, remember when you were a kid and you would like do this or that or whatever. We were at the grocery store. I don't even remember what it was. Oh, we were talking about the little things outside the grocery store that you put a coin in, like a little horse or whatever. And
they still exist?
No. So I mentioned something and he's like, oh, or the little horse or whatever. I'm like, yeah. And then I said to him, I don't like to think about things from childhood because they make me sad. Like even the good things, if I think about my childhood, I just get sad. So even just a conversation like that immediately triggers like sad feelings. Because I can't even, how some people say like, oh, I had some sad stuff in my childhood, but maybe it was good. Like, I don't know if I would even say there was that much that was that great. So to think about my childhood just feels really sad,
Yeah, I can see that. I don't remember my childhood, and it's probably trauma blockage of some sort.
Yeah.
But, looking back now in my 40s and thinking back to that moment and having the privilege to have conversations with people like you and really diving into like just the human experience and that, sometimes these really shitty moments make us who we are in a good way, right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of value in the mistakes and the crap and the trauma that we went through. Not that we would wish that on anyone else or ourselves, but having the opportunity to kind of go back and think about it, it's very weird to be in this space and go, okay, well, maybe that had to happen.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that as I was re-listening to the episode because I'm holding space for both things. Like I wouldn't say I'm glad that happened because how could you be glad that happened? Like my childhood or that relationship, but at the same time, I guess I can say I'm thankful for what it made me into, not the anxious part of myself because I really could do without that. However, the part of me that is, first of all, the part of me that is empathetic about others who have been in similar situations or are in similar situations or any of those things. So that part I'm thankful that came from it. I'm also thankful that what came from it was how hardworking I am and how resilient I am and how introspective I am to try to dig into my own crap so that it doesn't continue to hurt me or other people. Right? Like, so those sorts of things that came from that situation, I'm thankful for. I'm not glad that situation happened to me, but I am glad for the lessons and the qualities that came from it.
I agree 100%. I know for a fact that I would not be this version of me had my mom lived. I know for a fact that I would not have the relationship that I have with my father now had my mom lived. I know all these things. And so it's like being grateful for the experience despite the actual moments that were really terrible. But, I think it's very common. What I found is that a lot of people, especially people that have gone through trauma, I have a lot of conversations with people that have gone through some kind of tragedy or something really tough in their life. And then I have the people that are just like triggered, like all internal shifts that are amazing. And I'm like, I don't understand. What does that mean? But, like when I talk to people that come from some kind of tragedy, in most cases, when I have that final question of like, what would you say to so-and-so? And I made you cry a little bit when I asked you, but what would you say to that person? And a lot of them, especially if that person was a little bit older, they would be like, I wouldn't say anything because there's nothing I could say. I would just give them a hug. I would just, because this experience turned them into me. And at this point in my life, I wouldn't want to change things.
Yeah. That's a good observation.
But it's fascinating, right? Because I think performatively in society, we're just got to show the pretty parts, got to show the successes, can't show the vulnerabilities. And saying something like that is it's counterintuitive to like what we've been taught to do growing up, right? Like admitting like something bad turned into something, I don't know. It's very odd to say. So it's an interesting experiment that I guess the Life Shift podcast is.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, like if you're just looking at it on the macro level, to see different people's experiences and the different outcomes that come from them and different people's way of looking at them and reflecting on them and how they feel about it now, and like just see all the different ways that plays out. Because certainly there's other people that have been through what I've been through that had a completely different outcome. Maybe they, because I know for a fact, like, because my father was an alcoholic, when you're the child of an alcoholic, you have a higher chance of having an addiction. And I am vehemently opposed to, like, I'll have a drink every now and then, but like, I do not like any of that in excess. I've never even smoked a cigarette because I just like both my parents smoked and I just, I can't. So so
don't start now.
I was considering it, but since you said that, I won't.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But I mean, it could have gone a totally different way,
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes with the awareness or the ability to have that awareness. You mentioned, therapy later in life helped you kind of uncover certain things or really analyze certain parts of your life. I'd like to go in the direction of the power of storytelling. What do you think about do you listen to things where other people tell their personal stories? I know you work with a lot of women and you help them do that. What's like something that you would say about the power of storytelling?
Oh my gosh. I hear women's stories all the time because of the nature of the work that I do, working with women to create their talks. And often that involves telling their stories. And then I do listen to a lot of podcasts with, storytelling components and personal stories. And I also love to hear people's stories of resilience, like something they've been through and then what that turned into. And, there's just something about hearing a story that helps an audience, even if they didn't have the exact same experience, they can always resonate with some element of the story and feel the feeling that you want them to feel and just, identify with where you're coming from. And then not only does it change the audience, but it then ends up changing the storyteller as well, right? Because we often think like, well, why would my story matter? Because, who's going to care? Or, why is that going to matter? Or it's my tragedy is nothing compared to other people's.
Lots of that.
Yeah, there's, but there's always value in telling your story, even if the only value that comes from it, which it won't be, but even if it's just that it helps you when you're telling it.
Yeah. I didn't even plant the seed, but I got a message yesterday from someone that was on the show earlier than you. And they messaged me about an experience they were currently going through that was a very trying experience. And by the end of this message, they said, I just want to thank you for allowing me to have that conversation because you helped me free my voice. Mm-hmm. And I was like, because they had always been so quiet about the circumstance that they talked about coming on the show. And I was one of the first people they talked publicly about it. And since that moment, people have been messaging her about the experience. Hey, I'm going through the same thing. I thought I was the only one too, all these things. And to hear how telling her own story helped her, I mean, that's a win in itself. Like, yes. I mean, yes, it's lovely if other people can connect with what you're saying, but to feel that you let that story out in its completeness, and then for that to change you, I think there's such power in that. And I didn't realize that before I started this podcast.
Yeah, it's so true and that's why I think I've told my story in different portions of it and in different platforms to different people over the course of my whole life. And I know some people are less comfortable sharing their personal story. I've never been uncomfortable sharing it because it's not my fault. No, never. Never been uncomfortable sharing it because number one, like you said, it is part of what made me who I am. And also because I think there are other people who have a story and maybe are hesitant to share it, but want to, or don't realize how beneficial it could be to them and to others to tell their story. So I share it for all those reasons. And because the domestic violence component of it and the controlling relationship, but that's not unique to me. It's happening. It's happening today. It's been happening for a long time. It's out there. So, I think when we ignore or don't share what's going on, that's how problems grow.
Right. And we introduce shame because no one's talking about it. So the more that we talk about it, and you're setting examples for others, whether that's your intention or not, is that this is safe. Like we need to talk about these situations because not everything is sunshine and rainbows every day. In fact, a lot of the time it's not. Right. And those are probably the moments that we all can relate to the most when we share those, and not I got a promotion or these other things that we were conditioned to believe that other people wanted to hear about us. When, like you say, you could not even have the same experience, but something in someone's story can stick with you. I've even had moments where someone will reach out to me on social media and they'll be like, I just listened to this episode, and when so-and-so said this, and I was like, that was the part?
You never know.
You never know. It's the same thing. Like, had your friend use different words that day, and you heard, maybe the whole situation would have changed. And, so you never know what words, what things will hit you at the right moment and trigger that change.
Yes.
So I think there's a lot of importance of just continuing to share our story.
Absolutely.
When you work with these women with Speaking Your Brand, do you see a physical transformation when people share their story for the first time?
Yes. And sometimes it's just, like you said, like relief of just being able to tell the story. A lot of times it's just increased confidence, right? In knowing that their story matters, or just confidence in who they are because of what they've gone through. And even if the story isn't anything traumatic, just a story of how they got to where they are, it just builds their confidence in themselves. And I think I often get the sense that they feel like they're helping other people too by telling the story. So maybe some woman is trying to work towards some goal, and hearing this other woman's story helps them feel a little bit more powerful, or a little bit more like they can do it, or they have control. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's even in your situation, it's possible. You can get out of it. You're not stuck. And so, I think there's such value, and it's unreal how many stories we think on the surface sound the same.
Yes.
But then when you have the conversations, you're like, wow, that's quite different, because we're all trying to do the same thing, but we all have different experiences and we experience it differently. I actually had a conversation with someone who early on too, who lost his mother as a child. I was like, oh my God, I totally know what you're going to say. Like, I totally get it. And we couldn't have had the most different of experiences.
Wow.
And even to this day, in our 40s, how different we are because of that. And it's so fascinating to me because, my little 8-year-old brain, when my mom died, I just figured that everyone felt that way, if that happened. But in any case, I think there's such a power to the story. And I thank you for just wanting to be a part of it. If someone listening is that person that you described of like, I've never told somebody this, but I'm kind of itching to just get it out. Is there any advice you could give to someone that's sitting on something that's really just eating them up inside?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is, and I wish I had done this sooner, but talk to a therapist, because, if you have the means, I should say that I'm coming from a very privileged place where I have the means to do that. But if you're able, talk to a therapist, because I actually, before I made the decision to not have contact with my father anymore, I actually talked to a therapist, because society tells you you're supposed to love your father. He made you. And I would have people say that to me, but he's your father. I'm like, well, eventually you'll get back in touch with him. And I thought, God, am I crazy? Like, why? Is there something wrong with me that I don't feel that way? And so when I talked to a therapist, she said to me, no, I can see why you wouldn't want to be in touch with him. And that's totally okay. She said, you do not have to be in touch with your father just because you come from his DNA. You don't have to have a relationship with your father. And if you decide to, that's fine. And if you never decide to, also fine. So I was like, oh, okay. I just needed a third party person to tell me that that's okay, because I was like, is it me? What's wrong with me? So the first thing I would say is to talk to a therapist, because it's very helpful. Just like when we work with clients, having a third party to validate how you're thinking about something or feeling about something is so helpful. And that's what the therapist can do, is to validate how you're feeling, to make you feel like you're not crazy. And then that sort of unlocks a new way of looking at it, because you can set aside all those thoughts of like, is it me? Am I not looking at this right? Why do I feel like everybody's telling me this, but I don't feel that way? Blah, blah, blah. You can just set that aside. And now you can look at it in the way that's truly a fit for yourself,
Yeah. I mean, therapy. If you have the means, therapy is always recommended, I think, and finding the right therapist. So going through the process and making sure that you find one that feels right. Because, it took me like 5 people to find the one that worked for me. So I think there's importance in that. I also think, in my opinion, if you have something in you that you need to get out, even just say it out loud in front of a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes when those thoughts are in our head, they seem so much scarier and bigger and overwhelming. And then you verbalize them and you're like, okay, that's palatable. Like I can handle this. I can move forward in the next space. And so I always think that like, just get it out in some way, but ideally therapy for sure. And then, sharing with people that you feel will hold the space for you. If you can't, if therapy is not an option for you, find people that feel safe for you so that you can share it, because I think there's value in that. So
yeah, and you can also, I'm going to say this with a caveat that I am not a person who journals. However, with that said, there have been times where my therapist said, you need to write some of these things down, like just write. And it does help when when you feel kind of locked up with some story or thought process or something that is just weighing on you. And even if all you do is write it down and then burn it or throw it away, it's still getting it out is helpful.
Don't bottle it up. There are other people that can understand your circumstances. They can relate with you. There are people out there that care. And what I'm trying to do on the Life Shift podcast, I keep saying that my original goal is that each episode finds that one person that needed to hear the story that day. Mm-hmm. And if that happens with every episode, then we win, because we're bridging the gaps that I think we were conditioned to create. And so I'm just super honored that you wanted to be a part of it way back when, 150 years ago. And I appreciate you coming back. You sure do. I haven't left my house in 150 years either. I haven't seen the sun. I don't know what that is. But thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for letting my Patreon folks catch up with you. If you haven't listened to Diane's episode, go back, episode 20. It came out on July 26, 2022. So it'll be there forever for everyone to hear until she yells at me to take it down. So thanks again, Diane. Thank you for being a part.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Matt. Thank you.
And we will be back in a couple weeks with another bonus episode with former guests of the Life Shift podcast. For more information, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com.